If I told you I cheated, would you forgive me? Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to Family Tales by Ethan so you never miss out on these fascinating stories. And let us know what you're watching today in the comments. That's what my wife, Emily, asked me in the middle of our fourth couples therapy session, voice trembling just enough to make it sound brave and broken at the same time. We were sitting in this beige, over-air-conditioned office on the 10th floor of a glass building downtown. The kind of place where the plants are fake, the smiles are professional, and the furniture looks like it was ordered in bulk. On the coffee table between us sat a box of tissues no one had touched yet. That would change. I'm Noah, 37. And if you'd walked into that room right then, you might have thought you were seeing a husband blindsided by his wife's confession. You might have thought you were watching a man's world collapse in real time. But the truth is, my world had crumbled 2 months earlier, quietly, while she still kissed me goodnight and told me she loved me. By the time we got to that office, I wasn't confused anymore. I was waiting. When Emily asked her question, our therapist, Dr. Patricia Pat Carter, leaned in slightly, that calm, practiced concern on her face. She was mid-50s, silver streaks in her dark hair, soft cardigan, sensible shoes, the whole therapist starter pack. She glanced at me, then back at Emily, like she could feel something heavy had just been dropped between us. I kept my eyes on my wife and forced my voice to stay even. Is this hypothetical? I asked. For a heartbeat, Emily just stared at me, like she was hoping I'd laugh, brush it off, give her an easy way out. Then her face cracked, her mouth trembled, her eyes filled, and she turned away like she couldn't stand my gaze on her. No, she whispered. It's not hypothetical. If Dr. Carter was shocked, she hid it well. She folded her hands in her lap, her expression softening as she turned her attention fully to Emily. I could see it starting, the gentle guiding, the invitations to explore feelings, the safe environment for disclosure. Emily had wanted this. She'd insisted on therapy, said we needed to rebuild our connection, work on intimacy, fight for our marriage. Looking back, I'm almost certain this was her plan from the beginning. Confess in a controlled setting, with a professional referee to help manage my reaction, to help steer me toward forgiveness. She wanted structure, boundaries, a script. Too bad for her. I already knew the ending. It started 2 months before she brought up therapy. Nothing dramatic at first, just a collection of small, sharp moments that didn't feel right. Her phone, which had always been lying around the house unlocked, suddenly had a new passcode. She started sleeping with its screen down. Notifications stopped lighting up. Then there was the gym. Emily had always been into fitness, but she shifted into a new gear. Longer workouts, late evening classes, and every time she came home, she went straight to the shower before saying much more than a quick, hey. Her work outfits changed, too. More fitted dresses, a touch more makeup. Perfume I hadn't smelled on her in years. These are the things you notice and immediately argue with yourself about. You tell yourself you're paranoid, insecure, unfair. You remember all the times people online said, don't jump to conclusions, talk to your partner. I tried that. I asked how she was doing, if everything was okay, told her I felt like we were drifting. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said she was just stressed and trying to better herself. I did the thing I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Dan Wilson, a retired cop who now spent his days following cheating spouses and insurance fraud cases. A buddy from college who was going through his own messy divorce recommended him. He's discreet, thorough, and expensive, my friend had said. But you'll get the truth. Dan met me at a diner off the freeway, all gray hair and no-nonsense demeanor, hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug. I slid photos of Emily across the table, gave him her work schedule, gym location, car details. My voice shook a little, but my face didn't. I hope I'm wrong. I told him. He nodded, like he'd heard that line 1,000 times. People usually aren't. For 6 weeks, Dan followed my wife's life from the outside. I went to work, answered emails, did my job, came home, pretended nothing had changed. Emily talked about yoga clients, office gossip, and weekend plans. We watched Netflix. We ate takeout. We slept back to back. Then the reports started coming in. First it was just photos. Emily at a coffee shop with a guy I didn't know. Blonde, mid-30s, business casual clothes, leaning in too close over shared jokes. Then lunch. Then lunches. then a series of work meetings that apparently required no coworkers and a lot of time. The night Dan texted me a grainy picture of Emily and blonde guy walking into a hotel lobby together. Holding hands, my vision actually blurred for a second. I remember sitting on the edge of our bed in the dark, looking at my phone while she showered just 10 feet away, humming along to some playlist. The tile muffled the sound of the water, but I could still hear her voice, light and easy, like she hadn't just booked a room with another man that I didn't confront her. Instead, I stared at the photo until it burned into my brain, then forwarded it to my personal email and deleted the thread. I felt sick, but beneath the nausea there was this cold, solid thing forming in my chest. Dan didn't stop there. He dug through old phone records I still had access to, patterns I hadn't noticed because I hadn't known to look. Late-night calls, frequent texts tied to a different number, a different man, stretching back almost 3 years. There's another one, Dan said over the phone, his voice grim. Older trail. Name's Liam. This goes way back. 3 years. Nearly half our 7-year marriage. After that, I stopped asking myself if I was overreacting. I stopped wondering if maybe Emily was just lonely, going through something, confused. No, she knew what she was doing. She had known for a long time. Instead of screaming or packing a bag, I called a lawyer. Mark Reynolds was a family attorney recommended by the same friend who'd given me Dan's number. We met in his office, walls lined with degrees and heavy books no one reads unless they're paid to. I handed him a folder of what I had so far, photos, timelines, phone logs. Mark flipped through everything slowly. You've been married how long? 7 years, I said. No kids. House. Mine before the marriage. Only my name on the deed. I've paid every bill. He nodded. Good. Good. That word felt ugly in my mouth, but I understood what he meant that we talked strategy. We talked evidence. We talked about how courts viewed adultery in our state. He told me to keep collecting everything. Emails, texts, any proof that the affairs existed and had gone on as long as we suspected. Then, 2 months into my private investigation, Emily sat across from me at dinner and casually suggested we try couples therapy. I just feel like we're disconnected, she said, twirling pasta around her fork. We've been off for a while, Noah. I don't want to lose us. Maybe a professional could help us talk things through. She watched my face carefully as she said it, like she was waiting for resistance. I didn't give her any. Sure, I said. If it helps us, I'm all in. Her shoulders sagged with relief. She stood up, walked around the table, and wrapped her arms around my neck. I let her. She smelled like the perfume she'd started wearing to work. I'm so glad you're willing to fight for us, she murmured. The irony sat heavy between us. She thought we were starting some kind of healing journey. I knew we were starting a paper trail that we began seeing Dr. Carter a few weeks later. The first 3 sessions were textbook, communication styles, childhood baggage, unmet needs. Emily played her role beautifully, vulnerable but hopeful, teary at just the right moments. Especially when she talked about feeling emotionally distant from me, about wanting more affection, more effort. More dates that I played mine too. Concerned husband. Confused but determined. Willing to work. I talked about schedules, stress, how I wanted us to be better but didn't always know how. I watched her watch me, trying to gauge if I suspected anything. Session 4. I knew was going to be different. All week. Emily had been off. Restless. Fidgety. Checking her phone and then putting it down untouched. Crying at random commercials. She'd stare at me like she wanted to say something, and then swallow it back. By the time we sat down in those familiar chairs, I'd already guessed what was coming. Dr. Carter asked the usual warm-up questions. How had our week been? Any conflicts? Any positives? Emily answered in vague, shaky half-sentences. I mostly nodded. Then, during a lull in the conversation, Emily turned fully toward me. Her hands twisted in her lap, knuckles white. I have a question, she said, voice small but steady enough to carry Dr. Carter's gaze sharpened slightly, though her tone stayed gentle. Go ahead, Emily. My wife swallowed. Looked me in the eyes. If I told you I cheated, she said, would you forgive me? The air in the room seemed to thicken. Dr. Carter glanced at me, then back at her. I kept my face neutral, the way I'd practiced in the mirror the night before. Is this hypothetical? I asked, Emily's composure shattered. Tears spilled over, her shoulders shaking. No, she choked out. It's not. And just like that, we were finally saying out loud what I'd known in silence for 2 months. Emily didn't just confess, she unraveled. The moment the word no left her mouth, she folded in on herself like someone had cut the strings holding her upright. Dr. Carter leaned forward, voice quiet but steady, guiding her through the beginning of an explanation I'd already heard in fragments through PI reports and phone logs. But I sat still, hands clasped, breathing slow and controlled, because this part wasn't for me. Not really. This was Emily talking to the version of me she hoped still existed. The one who didn't know, who didn't see, who might be willing to salvage what she had already burned. It started last year, she said between sobs, brushing tears from her cheeks with trembling fingers. His name is Tyler. He works in accounting. We were just talking after meetings, and I don't know. I felt seen again, and she dissolved into another wave of tears. Dr. Carter murmured something about safety, honesty, courage. I didn't say a word. I just watched. He didn't mean anything, Emily insisted, staring down at her hands as if they held the truth she couldn't bear to face. It wasn't serious. It just happened. That phrase, it just happened, landed like a dull punch. Affairs don't just happen. They take planning, intent, repetition. The only thing that just happens is a sneeze. But I didn't respond. I waited. Dr. Carter, ever the professional, asked softly, "Is there anything else you want to share? This is a safe space to be honest." Emily froze. Her breath stuttered. And then she nodded, barely. There was someone else, before Tyler. Her voice dropped to a whisper. His name was Grant. It was longer, almost 3 years. Dr. Carter blinked. And to her credit, she kept her reaction measured, though I could see the quick flicker of surprise in her eyes. But Emily wasn't looking at the therapist anymore. She was staring at me, searching for something she could still hold on to. 3 years. She had said the number out loud. The weight of it pressed against my chest like a stone. I stayed quiet for a moment, letting the silence work through the room until Emily's breathing grew uneven again. Finally, I stood up. Dr. Carter looked startled. Emily panicked immediately, reaching out like she thought she could physically keep me in that room. Wait. Noah, please, sit down. We're supposed to talk about this. That's why we're here. I slipped my jacket off the back of the chair, smoothing the sleeves like this was a normal Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for your time, Dr. Carter, I said, calm and polite. This has been very helpful. Hold on, Noah, Dr. Carter said gently, standing up a little straighter. This is an emotionally charged moment, and walking out may escalate things. Perhaps we should discuss next steps together. I think we're done here, I said. Emily scrambled to her feet. What? No, we came here to fix our marriage. I looked at her then, really looked, at the desperation in her eyes, the streaked mascara, the trembling lip, and I felt nothing. No anger, no heartbreak, just the cold certainty of someone who'd already walked this road alone for months. You didn't come here to fix anything, I said. You came here to confess and get my forgiveness on the spot. But I came here to confirm what I already knew. Her expression went stiff, panic replacing heartbreak. What do you mean? I held her gaze without flinching. I hired a private investigator 2 months ago. I know about Tyler, the lunches, the hotel visits, and I know about Grant, the 3-year affair. Today just made it official. Her mouth fell open. You knew. Needed you to admit it, I said. On record. Therapist notes are admissible in court. Dr. Carter inhaled sharply, clearly unsure how to navigate this sudden shift in reality. Emily's face blanched like the blood had drained out of her all at once. You set me up? She whispered. You manipulated me for 3 years, I replied evenly. I just documented the truth. I walked to the door. Emily followed, stumbling in her rush. Noah, wait. Please, we can fix this. We can talk. We can please. But I kept walking. I didn't look at her again until I stepped into the hallway. Then I turned just long enough to say, we're done. The elevator dinged. I stepped in. She lunged forward, trying to follow, but I blocked the door with one arm. All communication goes through lawyers now, I said. The door slid shut between us, cutting off her choked sobs. Down in the parking garage, the cold air hit me first, the sharp, metallic smell of concrete and car exhaust. My footsteps echoed against the cement as I headed toward my car. I felt strangely detached, like watching someone else move through the motions. And then I saw him, standing beside his Lexus, wearing a gray suit and holding a manila envelope like a prop in a courtroom drama. Was Mark Reynolds, my attorney. Emily burst through the stairwell door behind me just as Mark stepped forward. Mrs. Walker, he said with a professional nod. Mark Reynolds, attorney at law. I represent your husband. She stopped dead. What? Why? Why are you here? Mark extended the envelope. You've been served. Her hand shook as she took it. What is this? Divorce papers, Mark replied. Filed this morning. Her eyes snapped to me, wide and disbelieving. This morning? But we were in therapy. You couldn't have known I'd confess today. I've known for 2 months, I said simply. Tyler, Grant, all of it. She looked between the envelope and my face like she was trying to find a version of reality where this wasn't happening. Panic twisted her features. You set me up, she said again, louder. You manipulated me into confessing. You manipulated me for years, I said quietly. This was just the truth finally catching up. Mark cleared his throat. Mrs. Walker, I recommend you hire legal counsel immediately. The packet outlines everything you need. Emily clutched the envelope to her chest like it was a lifeline, or maybe a death sentence. You're insane, she whispered. Both of you. This is entrapment or something. It's called gathering evidence, Mark said politely. Her breathing turned ragged. Noah, please. Can we talk alone? Just 5 minutes. Please. All communication goes through attorneys. I got into my car. Mark got into his. Emily stood there, shaking, mascara smeared down her cheeks, holding divorce papers she never imagined she'd get the same day she confessed. I pulled out of the garage without looking back, not once. The week after serving Emily the papers was chaos wrapped in silence. Not my silence, hers. The kind of silence that comes only after a storm, heavy and buzzing, like the air knows another one is coming. At first, I thought maybe she'd take the hint, retreat, regroup, talk to a lawyer before making any moves. But no. Within an hour of leaving that parking garage, the text started. Long, frantic, guilt-ridden paragraphs that alternated between heartbreak, rage, and denial that I didn't read most of them in real time. I skimmed enough to see the pattern. How could you do this to me? We made vows that I was going to end things with Tyler. You blindsided me. This is manipulation. You spied on me. That's illegal. You were emotionally distant. That's why I looked elsewhere. That last one made me stop mid-scroll. Emotional distance. As if I'd somehow willed another man into her life. As if I'd orchestrated 3 years of deceit with Grant just by not hugging her enough on a Tuesday. It was almost impressive, really, the mental gymnastics required to twist betrayal into victimhood. I screenshotted everything and sent it to Mark, and he called me with a single instruction: do not respond. Silence is your best weapon right now. So I stayed silent. She didn't dot by day 2, when my phone buzzed every 10 minutes. I finally blocked her number. That triggered phase 2. Other people. The first call came from Linda, her mother. If Emily's messages were emotional spirals, Linda's were verbal daggers. How dare you ambush my daughter like that? She'd snapped without greeting. Serving divorce papers in a parking garage. Have you lost your mind? Hello to you too, Linda, I'd said. Your daughter cheated on me with 2 different men. Thought you should know the full story. There was this delicious pause, sharp, stunned, she told me about. Mistakes, Linda said. People work through things. You don't just destroy a marriage over a lapse in judgment. 3 years of Grant. 8 months of Tyler. That's not a lapse. That's a lifestyle. Another pause. Grant. Oh. So Emily had only told her mother about Tyler. Interesting. Ask her, I said. I'm done explaining this to anyone. She called back 6 more times. I didn't pick up. After the 7th attempt, she gave up, or at least redirected her energy elsewhere. The next day, the doorbell camera motion alert pinged around noon. When I pulled up the feed, there she was. Emily, standing on the front porch like she still lived there, pounding the door with both fists. Noah, open the door. This is ridiculous. You can't lock me out of my own house. But I could, and I already had that. I pressed the intercom button. You need to leave, I said. This is my home. It's legally mine. Your name isn't on the deed. Gerald sent you the pickup schedule for your belongings. Choose a time. She went from furious to pleading in seconds. Please, Noah, please, just talk to me. Don't do this. You can call the police if you want, I said. Show them the divorce papers and the adultery clause. Let's see how sympathetic they are. The camera caught her eyes widening just slightly. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She stayed there another 10 minutes, alternating between sobbing and yelling. It ended only when my neighbor, an older guy named Mike, stepped outside and asked if she needed him to call the cops for her. She left immediately after that. The next call, surprisingly, came from Katie, her younger sister, and the only member of that family I'd ever liked. "Look," she said gently, "I'm not saying what she did is okay. It's not. But she's falling apart. Maybe you can ease up a little." "She had affairs for 3 years, Katie," I said, "with 2 different guys. That's not falling apart. That's building a second life." There was a long silence before she sighed. "I'm sorry this happened to you," she said. Sincerely, that meant more than I expected, but the calm didn't last, because the next phase wasn't phone calls. It was stalking. First, she showed up at my gym. I was on the treadmill, earbuds in. When she stepped onto the machine next to mine, eyes red, hair messy like she hadn't slept. "We need to talk," she panted, matching my pace. "Contact my lawyer," I said without looking at her. "I'm begging you, Noah, please." I pulled out my AirPod, paused the treadmill, and walked away mid-sentence. She followed me until a staff member intervened. The next day, she showed up at my coffee shop, then my office building. Security blocked her at the lobby. She cried to them. It would have been sad if it weren't so manipulative. Then the social media posts began. Long, vague monologues about escaping toxic relationships, years wasted on emotional neglect, partners who weaponize silence. She never said my name, but she tagged mutual friends. My inbox exploded with messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years, all wanting both sides. Mark told me not to engage, so I didn't. And then, the lowest blow, she called HR at my company with a complaint. Something about me creating a hostile work environment by discussing private marital issues with colleagues. I hadn't talked to a single coworker about anything. HR investigated, found nothing, closed the case. But the intent was clear. She wanted to destabilize my life any way she could. Mark sent her lawyer, some guy named Ross, a very firm letter documenting every incident. The stalking, the fake complaint, the harassment, the social media smears, Ross replied, with a gem of his own accusing me of harassment for refusing direct communication and encouraging family members to alienate her. The irony burned like acid. 2 weeks passed like that. Chaos wrapped in desperation. Then came the final stretch, the last hearing. The night before, Ross called Mark. Emily would accept the terms. No alimony, no house, no legal fees, just her belongings and her car. She must have known a trial would mean Grant and Tyler being subpoenaed. A public unraveling. A complete collapse of whatever image she was still clinging to. At the courthouse the next morning, she looked hollow, pale, like all the fight had drained out of her. She signed the paperwork with a trembling hand. Didn't even look at me. When the judge finalized everything, marriage dissolved effective immediately, I felt. Not joy, not victory, just a deep, heavy exhale. Outside the courtroom, she caught up to me one last time. "I hope you're happy," she said, voice raw. "You got everything you wanted." I shook my head. "I wanted a faithful partner. Didn't get that." She flinched. "I made mistakes. You made choices. For 3 years. With multiple people." Her eyes filled, but I didn't soften. "You didn't have to destroy me," she whispered. "I didn't," I said. "You destroyed yourself. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences." Katie appeared then and gently pulled her away. Linda glared at me like I'd personally burned her house down, but they walked, and that was it. Afterward, Mark and I grabbed lunch. He ordered a whiskey even though it wasn't noon yet. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Empty," I said honestly. "That's normal. Winning doesn't mean it didn't cost you something." He was right. It did cost something. 7 years, countless memories, and a version of myself I'd never get back. When I got home, I sat in my driveway for a long time. The house felt different now, quiet, but honest quiet. No lies, no hidden messages, no pretending. Emily moved in with her parents. Started taking more yoga clients to cover rent. Tyler got engaged to someone else. Grant disappeared into whatever life he'd built without her. And me? I'm 37, divorced, starting over. Most of my friends are married with kids. I'm the divorced guy now. But I'm free. Free in a way I didn't realize I hadn't been for years. Some betrayals aren't survivable. Some lies dig too deep to ever patch over. She once asked me if I'd forgive her for cheating. The answer was always no, that I just needed her to say it first.